area cup happened earlier in the day, so let's have it happen earlier now. And a lot of area cup information was flowing around, a lot of eyes from what I saw, try and look out for them.
Super cool events. Every area cup recently has been so stacked. Like there were some area cups around like the 20-ish era where like there wasn't that many top players showing up, but like top player versus top player final, another one. It just keeps happening. This time the final might have looked kind of weird to like maybe like newer players, but there was like a Melon group, there was a Mauricio group, neither of them made finals.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a crazy upset from the other team.
That is crazy, actually. I've only recognized those names, like hearing them, but I'm not too familiar. So this is going to be like a little introductory, or you're going to be our teacher for today, Pink Puffish Street. We're going to be learning from you, the sensei, today about a little bit about Area Cup and figuring stuff out. I've definitely been getting more into the Western scene, especially from behind, but seeing stuff from the East is going to be pretty interesting. I'm gonna lie. So. How about we learn a little bit like what? Yeah, I want to know a little bit more about like what is Area Cup, especially for, I'm sure I'm not the only one where I'm not too familiar with Area Cup. So could you tell us a little bit more about like what is Area Cup, how does it work, and all that?
Absolutely. So in the Western scene, everyone's like, okay, I gotta get rolling bands. I gotta get, Div 5002. Japan doesn't have a div system like that at all. The big tournament in Japan, there are some other big ones like Samio Mashuhai. That's a good tournament that it's never really streamed, so it's like pretty important. There's some popular tournaments in Japan in general, but the big one is Area Cup. This Area Cup is like if In the Zone had the attention of Lowink, like that basically. So many top players show up, top player after top player. Melon, Ryukun, Naigora, Lobster, Mauricio, Cammy, there's so many top players. Nearly every single one goes to Area Cup. It's very rare for a top player to not honestly play in one of those tournaments, in those tournament scenes. You actually also get ranked for how well you play in Area Cup as well, so it's just a big deal all around the board.
Oh,
really love it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting where In the Zone, it happens every month around the start of the month. Like we all have a general idea of when the In the Zone starts. For Area Cup, it's usually twice a month, and they do a pretty good job at like saying like the time. It's like sometimes it's a Wednesday, but sometimes it's a Tuesday, but usually like Saturday-ish.
Yeah, they have a whole website, right? I'm gonna pull it up right now. I'm also producing, so I'm sorry if I look up a lot, but yeah, they have an entire website here, kind of going into like what you're saying. Obviously, I will say though, as someone myself, I mean, I can speak another language, but it's not Japanese. It can be a little hard to navigate, all things considered. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like they have a few more things. They have an about section. I cannot read it unfortunately, but they also do have the ranking you were talking about, which I imagine this is some of the players you were like referring to.
Yeah, this top player at the top player right there. You got Lobster. If you don't know Japan, if you guys have seen a Blaster player that just runs up and just kills the whole lobby, that's Lobster. It's either Lobster or Rotaberu, but honestly, this is Lobster. But Ko in second, one of the best buckets in the history of the game. Shuma, the best V-Splash, played Splash during the N-Splash meta. Like, you guys remember that era where it's like, oh, it's Squeezer everywhere. You need to run N-Splash with the Squeezer. Shuma ran V-Splash anyway. Bro did not care. Milk Crepe, one of the best pens, the winner of the first Area Cup crown, very great player. Ryukun is an outstanding content creator and also a top player. Ryukun and Melon are honestly pretty similar in popularity in Japan. However, in the West, everyone knows Melon because, oh, that's the 5K guy, or like, oh, that's the top K52 from S2. Well, most people know him for like the 5K nowadays though, but Ryukun, sponsored by Exist, not sure still sponsored by that org, but great player. Honestly, they have sponsors in general in Japan is something we can talk about. Yeah, there's a good amount of orgs.
I'm curious. How does that work?
Like Melon, for example, it was like Melon, Ryukun, and I think it was I don't remember the third player, but no risk today. They were sponsored by an org called Exist, and then it got like a funny nickname. I was like Ikazist because Ika is like squid, and then Ika and Exist makes Ikazist. There was that sponsor that everyone was sponsored by them for a while, but right now Melon and Dynamon are sponsored by Yoshimoto Gaming, which is one of the more popular Japanese orgs. They do a lot of like esports in general, and they actually host a Japanese channel called Spix or Splatoon Topics. They like Japan likes to combine words a lot. Splatoon Topics Spix. But they do a lot of guides on there, for example. And there's some other players like Mauricio, sponsored by I need to double check here, but Mauricio has been sponsored by a good amount of players. I do think part of it has to do with how Nintendo is involved with Splatoon. But the scene is also just way bigger in like the player to knowing Splatoon ratio in Japan is much higher than the rest of the world, which is like kind of like more quote unquote money, not actual money, because there's no like prize pool tournaments in Japan, but more eyes, more attention is on the competitive scene there. Like King's Cup, another thing it's not King's Cup isn't related to Era Cup, but just like an example of how popular Splatoon is in Japan there. The VODs have 500,000 views.
Oh wow.
On YouTube.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's wild.
Like peak or average?
Well, technically peak there because like it was for the qualifiers for the final, but the final and the qualifiers for said final were just so popular. It's actually insane.
Okay. Also, I wanted to mention, first of all, the fact that the Japanese players are really into portmanteaus, like combining words, is really funny because I think the Western scene does that a lot too. A lot of Splatoon players now just like to mash words together, but the sponsoring of players is that individual players, or do they kind of have like sponsored teams? Like, do they pull together 4 people and like you are a part of this org?
Yeah, great question. It's leaning a lot more towards the individual players, and sometimes in the case of someone like, let's say, a Shuta, for example. Shuta is like a very young player, but he is sponsored by, gotta pull up the exact sponsor here, but he's sponsored, but more for like quote unquote content creation. But like 90 to 95% of his content is literally just competitive Splatoon content. So like he's basically sponsored for Splatoon, but just under the content name. Competitive Splatoon content is like so popular to where it's like, people like they'll sponsor you if you play like a shit ton of it, that kind of thing. Melon sponsored for, it was like Melon, Ryukun, and Reskill. They were sponsors together as a group that just do a lot of stuff around the early scene of Japan. But usually, it's leaning more towards like, this player is very good, let's sponsor them, that kind of thing. It's great. I really like it.
Yeah, and continuing on the sponsor end as well, like we realize that there have been sponsors in the past for Western Splatoon. We could go to organizations like In Control that has had either 2 or 3 teams at this time. Of course, still not in the scene actively right now, but in the past, In Control has had 2 or 3 teams. We also had like other larger ones like Ghost Gaming represented by Team Olive at the time in Splatoon 2. What do you believe we in the Western scene could do to try to reach out to get sponsorships as teams? Or do you think the better way to approach it is as an individual trying to get a sponsorship?
It's interesting, and I do want to say we are getting into that direction where sponsors will start caring. Big thing is the idea of people getting sponsored for quote unquote content creation, but then most of that content just being competitive Splatoon, like Ryukun, for example, right? The scene is caring a lot more about producing content, which is just great for so many reasons. It helps a lot with like competitive Pokemon, for example, right? Because there's several creators that have a lot of views and a lot of eyes on competitive Pokemon because the players are choosing to make high quality content for it. The more we do that for the West, the more people will start caring, more money, sponsors care. They're going to care about us because we're giving them money. We're showing them, hey, if you sponsor this competitive Splatoon player, you're going to turn a profit because a lot of eyes will be on my content because people care about the game. So it's definitely a snowballing type thing. Competitive Splatoon is just super popular in Japan, and then as a result, like sponsors just care more there. But if you're out there, make content, do the best you can. The more that happens, the better.
Yeah, I think that like it is going to be pretty interesting, like seeing like content wise, because I know there's been a big push, especially in at least conversations I've seen on like specifically Blue Sky, where a lot of people are pushing to like try and do more content. Hell, we're doing something now but not to get into that, but like I think it's very important, especially because we've seen a lot of the Western scene. There are significant like bigger content creators, too many to count, the Splatubers, if you will, but I feel like a lot of them aren't really too focused on like the competitive scene. I feel like they capture a really good like casual audience, and I feel like one of the few ones that really like kind of meld the two is like, I would definitely say like Dude and Chara for sure. And I think that both of them, especially Char, actually actively still being like in the top level of play, and still actively competes and or coaches, I think is like a big aspect of that like makes it pretty interesting. And it's like, yeah, I agree. I think content is the way. It's how to make money. I mean, the only other way is like genuinely just charging for stuff. But I know like watching something is definitely cheaper than having to fork over money to be able to participate in something. That's why, especially in the social media digital age, everyone wants to just, I'd rather watch an ad than have to pay like a pay-per-view on like a tournament, right? Like that would be ridiculous. Yeah,
Definitely. And for people that want to follow Area Cup even more, you can find their own website at areacup.com. So you can look at when upcoming events are happening for Area Cup. If you scroll down through their website, the next 2 Area Cups have already been announced. So make sure to go keep an eye on that.